Hoop FM. Call 614-5553. You can join in on the conversation. Again, that's 423-614-5553. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, we're back right here in the studio. Franklin had to leave us. He's got injuries where he went on his snow skiing trip and got hit by a board on the last day there, he said. So he's going to
a snowboard. Nobody attacked him with a board.
He didn't get attacked by a Republican, did he?
No, he did not.
Anyway, we have John Stansberry and myself still left here in the studio. And, there's a cartoon here I brought in this morning, John, I thought was pretty creative. It says, we did it. Here's another payroll tax extension. And then it's got people standing on the front porch that says, okay, we got mortgage help, tuition help, tax cuts, what else? And they're saying on the front porch, how about giving us a free vacation?
Well, actually, Steve, I was reading yesterday some statistics on that. Americans who rely on government aid receive an average of $32,748 worth of benefits. The average American's disposable income, working American, is $32,446. So the people on aid, on average, actually take in more money than the average working American's disposable income. The problem with systems like that is, why would you go back to work? If you can sit on the couch and get more disposable income from the government than a working American earns by working 40 hours a week, why would you ever go back?
That's the problem, I think. I think that you've got more and more. In fact, I mean, I personally know some that are taking advantage of the system. It's amazing to me.
Well, they also, the last year or so, they've had a real problem with the increase in disability unemployment benefits. They've gone up 30% in the last year. Claiming mental disability or physical disability. And the problem with those payments is, once you get on the disability rolls, you stay on them for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Anyway, what do you think about the extended the extension on the unemployment and so forth going on right now? I know the Republicans, the tax relief, I think is what it's called. Is that right?
The payroll tax.
Payroll tax.
Right.
Anyway, I know the Republicans went along with that, but they were saying that it was a political move, or basically it was just a move so Obama, the Democrats wouldn't negatively just come all over it. They really thought it was a good deal to go ahead and extend that.
Well, no, actually, the problem with the whole way this was sold to the press, or the way the press sold it to the public, the Republicans wanted to extend it longer. In December, when they had this battle, the House Republicans voted to extend the payroll tax for a year. The Senate Democrats only voted to extend it for 2 months. That's what the battle was over. So it was frustrating for the Republicans to be labeled, oh, you don't want to give the working Americans this tax cut, when they actually wanted to give it to them for a longer period of time. But now it is true that the president basically wants to extend it through the election so he can keep everybody happy. Hopefully they vote for him. Then after that, he will deal with it. Republicans wanted to deal with it on the front end.
All right. Let's take this call. Go ahead, caller. You're live on Whoop.
Yeah, I wanted to take a little issue with what John was saying earlier about the military expansionism. And the problem is, and as he stated, we have all these little, ongoing wars and ongoing situations that in reality most of those situations are, because of our situations, our interventions in those areas of the world. And the problem with this is this seems like it's made the perfect scenario for those who benefit from war, whether that's the people who lend the money for the wars or the people who make the munitions or whomever, whatever you want to call that. They benefit from this because now you have no defined enemy. You have no defined enemy, and you have you have no defined directive of anything. Mm-hmm. So what we actually have now is the perfect scenario for never-ending war because of our interventionisms in these areas.
So tell me your question again. Kind of pinpoint the exact question you're trying to ask.
Well, I don't know that it's a question. It's more that it's a statement that, by this constant military expansionism and policemen, our situation of trying to police the world, that we are actually putting ourselves in a position never to be able to end the wars, never being able to maintain a constitutional government, because the amount of spending and stuff that goes into all this, and the American people have no benefit from any of this.
I think
all we have is a constantly never-ending war because you have no real defined enemy.
Well, let me ask you this, caller. Mr. Obama seems to want to downsize everything, and he thinks that, if we just give up all this stuff, everybody else will give it up too, and then we'll all just be a free, happy world and live happily ever after. Do you believe that?
Well, no, here's what I do believe, though. I do believe that when you are in somebody's backyard and you have drone attacks and you kill people and you define human beings as collateral damage that are not even involved in a lot of these situations. These are civilian. And what I do believe is that by those things, then you do aggravate the situation, and you are a recruiting tool for Al-Qaeda, which, it's Al-Qaeda interesting situation there. Where did Al-Qaeda even come from, But I guess my point is that I don't have a problem if we are attacked to go to war. But I do have a problem with is that there is no clear definition of where our enemy is and what our goals are. We are fighting a term. We're not fighting an enemy.
Well, let me comment. I don't disagree. Those are actually, from my perspective, two different discussions, because how many different places we go in is a completely separate discussion as to what we militarily are prepared to do. The cost of being in there and all, that's a different cost. I'm talking about the number of ships that we have, the number of active duty people we keep at the ready. Now, where we send them, I agree. We probably need more discussion, and a frustrating thing for me from the political side of this is President Bush, when he went into Iraq, whether you agree or disagree, he did go to Congress. He did get full authority to do that, and Mr. Obama at the time criticized that move and said that he would never, if elected, go in without authorization. He actually sent troops and sent material and sent all kinds of assets into Libya with no congressional approval at all. So he violated his own word, and I think that's probably more what the caller is getting to, is how do we decide when we use these assets. My problem with the cuts that Obama's doing is I believe he's cutting us too deep to where we're not ready to respond to an appropriate situation.
He's cutting the muscle. All right, caller. Thanks a lot. In other words, he's cutting the muscle.
Well, that's a good discussion of when should we be somewhere and where should we be. But it doesn't have anything to do with are we capable of being where we need to be. And I think this president, it's amazing to me, he can't find any cuts in a social program that is actually what's growing out of bounds and going to destroy our economy, but he can find cuts in the military to make.
Getting back to our tax relief question, I'm sitting here looking at something. A person earning $50,000 will save roughly $1,000.
Right.
With that tax relief benefit.
Well, why would that, but here, philosophically though, Steve, why would you believe that's a benefit if you don't believe a tax cut for someone making $60,000 is good, or someone making $80,000 is good? How can the president say, oh, it's good to give these people a tax cut and it helps the economy through their increased spending because they have increased disposable income, but it's not good for someone who makes more than that? I'm completely for that tax cut. I'm for cutting everybody's taxes.
That's right. That's exactly right. Changing the subject here, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania may have to file for bankruptcy protection. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania has just spent too much money for too long and now faces the awful consequences. In Alabama, Jefferson County, where Birmingham, Alabama is located, filed for bankruptcy in 2011. It was the biggest municipal bankruptcy in U.S. history. California's upside down. What's going on? What's going to happen here with some of these states and the way the spending's going on? And it's just mismanagement of money.
Well, we talked about this last week. It's really the public's fault, because we talk about wanting to cut things, but as soon as we start to cut something we like, we go, no, wait a minute, we don't want you to cut that. I mean, the fact of the matter, Steve, is right now we're talking about the county commission just authorized to go on the ballot a wheel tax, and that's going to be for education. But answer me this. Do you not remember 2 years ago when they pushed for an increase in the sales tax? What was the reasoning for that increase? It was the schools.
Yes.
And that's going to take care of it. Now, 2 years later, what is it? Oh, we need the wheel tax for the schools. Mm-hmm. And these tax abatements for Whirlpool and for Vocker, what part of that do they not get abated? They didn't get abated for the schools. What was that money for? So every time we turn around, we've authorized money for something, and then the next thing we know, a year later, 2 years later, whatever, whether it's the county government, the city government, the state government, the federal government, they're back at our door going, well, we need more. At some point, there's not more to have, and they need to cut some spending on all levels of government.
In other words, go down the line and just look where it can be cut and cut it out. You know, I was looking here, a state official was talking about, this was this Harrisburg, Pennsylvania bankruptcy. It says, now a state official is sorting through the financial wreckage and making recommendations to rescue the city. Those recommendations include changes in contracts with unionized city workers. But that is iffy, since the unions would have to agree to the changes. Tax increases are in the prospect too, and if the proposed measures aren't adequate, Harrisburg may have to file for bankruptcy. I mean, there's another article I had somewhere about governor of Alabama.
He's been cutting ever since he got in office.
Yeah, and they were talking about typically every new governor that comes in forms a special committee to sit here and cut, and that usually sits on a shelf somewhere and gathers dust. But this governor in Alabama this time is not doing that. He's planning on cutting $400 million back out of his budget this next year.
Well, you've got Alabama's cutting their budget. Georgia's cutting their budget. Tennessee is cutting their budget. Governor Haslam is cutting the budget. Have we seen any cuts from the county government or from the city government? I mean, are we immune to the same problems that we see all around us? You know, why would we be any different? But we're not cutting anything.
Well, you bring up some good points here. It's too bad Franklin's not here to talk to you about it, because I agree with everything you're saying.
Well, and let me say one thing I ran across, and I don't have the exact fact in front of me, but I ran across something Franklin had talked about a few weeks ago about government spending, and I would probably like to do away with the Internet that was developed by the government. I kind of looked into that a little bit, and that's an interesting story. The actual main components of the Internet were developed in the Bell Labs in 1936 or 37, I believe. But because the government was in bed with AT&T and they had basically a monopoly on our phone service, there was no competitive pressure to develop the Internet. So it was actually developed without government help, and had the government not been involved in the marketplace, probably they would have had competition, they would have developed the Internet to get a leg up on the other companies they were competing with, and we quite possibly could have had the Internet a decade or two before we actually did.
Oh, golly, I don't know if I could have handled it any sooner.
Well, I'm not sure it's a good thing for us, but he mentioned the Internet, and I just wanted to kind of do a little research on the facts.
I'll say one thing. Internet has changed the world. No doubt in my mind. Good morning, caller. You're live on Whoop. Good morning, caller. You're live on Whoop.
Yes, I just heard John speaking about the local government and spending, and I was actually at the county commission meeting yesterday and find it very interesting that we have county commissioners, a county commissioner in particular, who doesn't believe that the citizens are capable of deciding funding issues, and that, you know, we're trying to impose this wheel tax, and they are, and we've got them to put this on a referendum, which means the people vote on it. And this particular county commissioner said that he was ready to vote for a property tax right now, and felt that the county commission was shirking their duties by not voting on this themselves. Basically saying that the people don't really have a right to decide on the funding for the schools when